But we have some major breaking news from Newcastle in their search for a new manager. We spoke to Keith Downey a little bit earlier. He said that it was developing all the time. And now, Keith, you've got even more news for us.
Yeah, Vicky, thanks very much. Welcome back to St James's Park. It's the news. The Newcastle United supporters didn't want to hear this lunchtime. I think it's the news many of them have feared most of the morning. And that is that Unai Emery, the Villarreal manager, has turned down the advances of the Newcastle United's new owners to take over here at St James's Park. He's released a statement in the last few minutes, Vicky, and I'll read out the statement to you. He says, "I'm honestly grateful for the interests of a great club, but I'm even more grateful to be here. And that is why I informed the president, and I heard my decision to want to continue being part of this project because of the commitment and respect that I perceive from the club and from my players that is mutual and reciprocal." He said, no matter how much noise there was yesterday in another country, and by that he means here in the UK, there was transparency and loyalty within Villarreal and the Roig family, that is the president's family, and their staff, which is maximum for me, and that is what is most important to me. He says, Villarreal is my home, and I am 100% committed to stay here. So those are the words this lunchtime of the Villarreal manager, Unai Emery, who of course we have been telling you Newcastle have courted to take over here from the sacked Steve Bruce. They had those talks late on Sunday. They were hopeful of concluding a deal for him to have him in the dugout to face Brighton on Saturday. Obviously, he took that match last night in the Champions League, came out of the other end of it with a 2-0 win. At the end, it was a little bit unclear as to what was going to happen regarding his future. He has made that abundantly clear this lunchtime by saying he will remain in Spain. I think the reason for that is, from reports we are hearing in Spain, is that he was just a little bit hesitant about the project here. Obviously, coming to Newcastle, who are second bottom of the Premier League without a win all season, would have been a huge shift from him currently being manager of a team in the Champions League and joint top of their Champions League group alongside Manchester United. He's felt that it was too big of a change. He's felt that he's not sure about the project. He's felt the love of Villarreal, and it sounds like he's a little bit disappointed about reports emerging that he'd had those talks on Sunday. A combination of all of that means that as we stand here this lunchtime, Unai Emery has turned down Newcastle United, and the hierarchy here at the club, the new owners, are going to have to turn their attentions elsewhere.
Yeah, look, and you mentioned the new owners there, Keith, because this is going to come as disappointing news for the fans, but them as well. And this is a bit of a measure as to where the club's at. It's in a little bit of disarray at the moment in terms of the new owners coming in and not really having a football head ruling over things at the moment.
Yeah, Vicky, that is exactly it. That is the exact issue here. There's no one working really within the new consortium that has been involved with a football club before. So this is all new to them. There's teething problems for them. They're trying to work out exactly how they go about things. Maybe they'll look back in this in months or years to come and think there were slight mistakes at the start. I think there always will be teething problems when it comes to new owners coming in. And I think the biggest surprising thing for me, Vicky, is that they have not looked to bring in a chief executive or a director of football, a sporting director yet. I think if you get someone like that in who's used to dealing in these circles, I think things might a little bit easier in terms of bringing in someone like Unai Emery, who's obviously worked at the top level for a long time. They don't have that. There's people working behind the scenes who have not been involved with a football club before, and I think that's what creates these teething problems. But also you've got to remember it's all new as well. It's new to the consortium, it's new to any agents or representatives they're talking to, it's a new group to people like Unai Emery to speak to. So that is something they're going to have to get used to. It's also not now a huge football club with all this money to spend that are in a really healthy position. Newcastle, as I've alluded to earlier, are currently sitting second bottom of the Premier League. There's a real threat of relegation there. So for someone like Unai Emery to have his head turned and to move here to Newcastle, it would be a massive decision for him to make. So I think now the consortium need to look at it. Do they look again at someone like Unai Emery, who obviously is a serial winner? He's won the Europa League 4 times. He's been manager of Arsenal before. He's held in very high regard. Or they look more for someone who can come in on a temporary basis, someone who can get them out of the problem that they face right now at the foot of the Premier League. and try and deal with it maybe on a week-by-week basis until the end of the season. I think that's a decision they've got. I think the PIF consortium, the PIF, the Saudi part of it, would like a big name here. Obviously, they targeted Unai Emery. They haven't managed to get that. They're now going to have to turn their attentions elsewhere. And you have to say, the shortlist that they had is ever shortening. So it's a really interesting and developing story, this. Who takes over here at Newcastle United at the start of this new regime? They did want Unai Emery. Sadly for the Newcastle United supporters who are pleased to hear that news, and sadly for the consortium who had hoped to bring him in, that isn't going to happen.
Yeah, just finally, Keith, sorry, I know you might be having problems with your earpiece, but whether you can still hear me, just finally, and you sort of alluded to it there, but I've just got up the odds on who the next person could be in through the door, and you mentioned some of them there. Do they go back to the likes of Eddie Howe? You look further down the list, there's the likes of Sam Allardyce, Chris Wilder, people still out of jobs that could potentially do a job. What's your feeling? This is very much putting you on the spot. I understand that, Keith. But what's your feeling? Do you think that they will then have to go back and do a short-term fix rather than think long-term with this? Because they need a manager and they need him now.
Yeah, well, there's two outstanding names that are there that have been on the periphery for a while. One of them is Eddie Howe, who we know there has been an interest there from within the consortium. He's out of work just now. He would be a fairly easy appointment. I think he would take this job in a heartbeat. He is someone who could potentially come in. The other is Roberto Martinez, who's currently with Belgium. They would then have the issue of trying to get him out of his contract. It wouldn't be quite as expensive or as difficult as it was or was likely to be with Unai Emery. But those are two, I think, that are possibilities. They've got Graham Jones here at the club as the interim caretaker manager. Graham Jones has worked with Eddie Howe before at Bournemouth and got on very well with him. He's also worked with Belgium underneath Roberto Martinez as well. So either of those would be a natural fit. Yes, you would say probably in Eddie Howe's case, not on the same level in terms of what he's done in the past as Unai Emery. Roberto Martinez, you would say, well, he would be leaving a national team like Belgium, who obviously have got some huge big name players there. So those are two names, and you have to say, when you look at the options now, we know the club spoke to Paulo Fonseca a couple of weeks ago. Nothing has emerged from that, so you would have to suggest that now is not going to happen. Lucien Favre was another that has been named. So there are managers that have been spoken to that obviously they haven't impressed the hierarchy here enough to take over. I don't think that's the case with Eddie Howe and Roberto Martinez. I think those are two that are potential possibilities that could come in. But you'd also say the likes of Howe and Martinez will look at this and they think it looks a little bit of a mess with the Unai Emery situation. So will they think about things themselves again? It's back to the drawing board for the club and the hierarchy. And as I say, there are teething problems. There are issues that start with any of these new takeovers, and when a consortium comes in to take over a club, this, more than anything else, is a real case in point, and it leaves Newcastle and their new owners, Vicky, in a really difficult situation ahead of this match against Brighton at the weekend.
Yeah, it certainly does. Keith, as always, brilliant stuff. Thank you.